I wanted to thank the library for giving us this space, and thank you to all of our candidates for joining us tonight. And thank you all of you citizens for participating in this form of democracy. I think it's so important that we pay attention to what's going on in our city. This upcoming election is particularly important, so I'm glad to see you all here today. My name is Alessandra Rodriguez-Murray. I'm the Manchester and National Organizer for Rights and Democracy. We are a double state-based org. We are in Vermont and New Hampshire, and we work across a variety of issues that we think are necessary for building a just society. So this includes anything from Medicare for all, to raising the minimum wage, to implementing legislation that we think is important in regulating the climate. I'm a Manchester resident. I've been living here for the past few years, and I'm just excited to be working here in the city as well and participating in this upcoming municipal election. I just wanted to thank our co-hosts as well. Laura from Inklink is here representing, and Josie from New Hampshire Youth Movement. So I'll let Laura, who's a citizen journalist from Inklink, give a little intro to what they do.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Laura Aronson. Usually you're seeing me in print, not in person. I'm a news reporter. I had a bad dream the other night that someone was asking me to do something totally outside my wheelhouse, and I'm like, I'm just a news reporter, I'm a writer. But anyway, I've been well trained by Toastmasters. So we're pleased to host you all tonight. If you're not already a subscriber, you can get daily headlines from Inklink. It's on our website, so that's inklink.com, right? Andy knows. Yes, I got it right. ManchesterInklink.com. So, and we will be doing a voter's guide, and at this point I'm busy collecting information from all the various candidates so that we can give you a compilation of information about their background and their positions. Thank you for coming tonight. This is Josie Pinto. Josie Pinto is here with the New Hampshire Youth Movement.
Thanks, Laura. Hi, everyone. My name is Josie, Regional Organizer with New Hampshire Youth Movement. We are an organization of young people who are committed to stopping the climate crisis, supporting Medicare for all, and supporting free college for all. We also are really involved in the fight to save our voting rights here for students in our state. As many of you know, they're very much under attack right now, and our fingers are crossed that the ACLU lawsuit goes our way, because right now it's really hard for out-of-state college students to vote in our state. We have a house here in Manchester where 4 organizers are living in a movement house style where they organize full-time through the primary, which is really exciting. We also have one in Dover, and we are on every college campus around the state, making sure students have the information they need to get out and vote. So we're really devoted to increasing youth voter turnout here in New Hampshire and making sure a progressive champion wins the New Hampshire primary. So thank you all for being here. Super excited to hear more from the candidates. And here's Vanessa Blaze, who is a member of Progressive Manchester, which is a coalition we're continuing to build here in Manchester to unite around progressive issues and get more groups talking to each other and coordinating with each other. So take it away, Vanessa.
So my job here tonight is to give the instructions on how the forum is going to work. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for an opening statement and 3 minutes for a closing statement. Travis Morin, the journalist from the Hippo, will be our moderator tonight. There'll be no spontaneous interaction from the audience other than you are welcome to fill out a question card. If you have a question card, just motion to me at some point and I will come and pick it up from you. And if you care to ask the question yourself, then please put your name on the question. If you do not want to ask it yourself and you would like one of the panel or the moderator to ask the question, then they will go ahead and ask it for you. The predetermined questions were written in collaboration by the Inklink staff and Rights and Democracy leaders. They were sent to all of the candidates, and Inklink will be publishing an article that will contain all of the responses from the candidates, so we'll get a full spectrum from everyone. This event is streaming on Facebook Live, and it is also going to air on Manchester Public Television. thank you to all the candidates and our audience members for coming tonight. And without further ado, we are going to turn it over to our moderator, Travis Moore.
Thank you very much. Before we get started, obviously you folks may have known that Alderman Joe Kelly-Lavasser was supposed to join us this evening. Unfortunately, we received word this afternoon about the untimely passing of his grandfather. He could not join us. We obviously extend our deepest condolences to his family, who must be going through a terrible time tonight. But without further ado, let's get started with the school board. So allow me, please help me welcome the three candidates. We have Laura Caroga, James O'Connell, and Jean Martin. Guys. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Now, as we mentioned, we're going to have the opening statements from all of you, and inside that opening statement is also the first question, so it's kind of a twofer. The first question and opening statement being, a young family is considering a move to Manchester. What would be your top 3 selling points? And let's start with Laura. This mic is theirs, right? Yeah. Yep.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. It's really nice to see people come out and hear about their municipal elections and potential leaders. So again, I'm Laura Caroga, running for school board at large. I have a son, Logan. He is almost 16. He's a sophomore at Memorial High School. He's gone to Jewett and Southside, and he's had a great experience. And I'm running because I want every child to have a positive experience like he has. So I'm going to share a little bit more about why I'm running, but I will answer the question in the process.
Fair enough.
How about that? And I'll keep it to 2 minutes. So I'm, in short, I'm running because I really think the board needs to refocus on student learning and achievement and ensure that students are really poised for success later on in life. I want to see teachers and the other school personnel have fair contracts and the tools and resources they need to help students be successful. And then I want to bring civility and common sense problem solving back to the board. I think we've seen a shift in culture and behavior over the past few years that has taken our focus away from student learning and achievement and what our schools need in order for our community to really thrive and be attractive to young families. Who we might want to be attracting to continue I think, prosperity that our community has started to really see over the last couple of years. So in terms of families that would be considering moving here, I would say this is a wonderful community to be in. I chose to raise my family here. More and more we're seeing opportunity for families to visit really beautiful parks, the amazing Millyard Museum. The library is fantastic with a recent renovation. There's more and more opportunity for families to really become part of the community, and the schools are part of that. Our schools are welcoming, they're engaging in innovation all the time in pockets around the city, and so I think that the only place we can go is up.
Thank you very much. All right, next up is you, Mr. O'Connell. Obviously, opening statement, and when you get to it, please, the same question. A young family is considering a move to Manchester. What would be your top 3 selling points?
Okay, well, thank you. First of all, thank you to all of you for being here tonight. It's wonderful to see you all participating in this election process. My name is Jim O'Connell, and I'm running for school board at large. This is my first time running. I've lived in Manchester since 1997. I've been in the United States since 1992. My wife has been a resident. She grew up off of Boynton Street on the west side, and she's a graduate of West High School. I have 4 children, 3 of whom have graduated from Manchester schools, and my youngest son is currently at Central High School. So the question might be, as many of you may know, I've been advocating, agitating, and making myself a pain in the butt generally around topics of education in the city for perhaps going on 20 years. And so the question might be, why run and why run now? And The reason why I'm running now is because I did spend all that time, like many of us do when we have kids in school, working on boards of soccer teams or Little League, and I was the president of the parent-teacher organization at Hillside for 6 years, where lots of parents working hard to improve the school that way. I founded and was president of Citizens for Manchester Schools, where we led the effort to try and push the city to support our public schools and to recognize its deficits. And we got to where we are today, where I found that effort is no longer, it just hasn't been successful. Our schools, we can talk about the wonderful things that are happening in our schools, and there are. I was over at MST last night, and it was wonderful to see some of the wonderful things going on there. But the fact is that our school system is going forward and succeeding despite the challenges, not because of the support that it's getting. So we need drastic change. I'd like to see, I agree when Laura mentions the issue of incivility that we have, and the lack of vision and unity in our public boards. And we can't, it's like going out on a team to play a game and you don't have a game plan, and you can't be successful that way. So I'm going on the board to see if I can bring the ideas and thoughts that I've been expounding from the outside for a long time and bring them inside. Very quickly, the 3 things I would say about people coming to the city. I chose to live in Manchester. There are so many great things about the city. I think any unbiased observer can tell today that it's a vibrant downtown with lots of things happening on the cultural scene, restaurants and bars, and the opening of the Rex Theatre, the expansion of the hospitals that we have going on. The Mill Yard is a blossoming and booming business place. And then, of course, our proximity. We have the benefit of Boston in the distance, but all the pluses of living in a wonderful city, while not living in a city like Boston, but having the benefits of a smaller city and the pluses of all the wonderful things we have here. So,
Thank you, Mr. O'Connell.
thank you.
And lastly, you, Mr. Martin. Same question again. A young family is considering a move to Manchester. What would be your top 3 selling points?
Okay. Thank you so much for coming out tonight, and thanks for putting this on. It's important that we get a chance, and the citizens get a chance to chat with the candidates, ask questions, and be a part of democracy. So thank you for being a part of that. For me, I never thought I would ever run for the school board. Not something I ever aspired to. I moved to Manchester when my family moved here in 1999, and before that, my family was a lot like a lot of the families that we see in Manchester, really blue collar, trying to get by. My parents had split up for a few years. I ended up living in a homeless shelter, so public education was really important to me. I was the first person in my family to graduate from college. I went to Memorial High School and sort of went to college, graduated, met my wife. We had our first child back in February. And when we were taking turns for a few hours, of who was gonna be up with Catherine, I started to watch the school board meetings, because at 11, 12 o'clock at night, sometimes they were still going on. And I would watch the dysfunction that I was seeing, and I just couldn't really believe what I was watching and some of the behavior of some of the people there. And the mayor, Mayor Craig, said at one point, "Remember, we're here for students." And I thought to myself, no mayor should ever have to tell school board members that they're there for students. That's part of the job. And so that happened, and then really thinking about my daughter and how we want to live in Manchester. A lot of my friends have moved out because of the schools, and I think we have to change that. I was in Colorado for work. I travel a few times a month, and someone was talking about how they wanted to move to New Hampshire, and I said, Manchester is really hip. And so I laughed when I saw the Union Leader wrote the story how Manchester is really hip. There's lots of great things going on. Jim and Laura talked about whether it's the museums, whether it's the downtown, great things, but we need our schools to be just as great. And my goal to serve our community on the school board is that in 5 years, people look and they say, I could go to Manchester, I could go to Bedford, they're both great school systems. That should be our goal. We have to end the bickering, and hopefully with your support, I'll be able to go and be a champion for our students. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. All right, so let's get get to the meat of this. So this first question is going to be for all of you. So let's start with you, Ms. Kroger. What will you do to get an agreement on the teacher's contract?
So, so I think first and foremost, be willing to listen. And I think that, from an outsider's perspective, my sense has been we went, or conversations started really looking at, one side, this being a two-sided thing, so sort of one against the other. And I think the reality is that there's ways that maybe conversations just haven't happened first, and let's have a conversation about where we want to be at the end. What in the end, what do we want? We want our teachers to have a contract, and we want them to have a fair contract. So how can we get there? And I think even calling it negotiations is sort of makes things adversarial initially. So I think that starting with the opportunity to really be collaborative and moving forward, listening to what the unions have to say, what the school board's perspective is, what the budget is, and going forward from there is really important. But in my work as a professional, that is what I do all the time. I work cross-sector with lots of organizations who are for-profit, non-profit, and everyone sort of has a different vision or a different path that they want to take to get what's best for their organization. And so my job is to bring people together and build that shared vision and a plan for how we're going to get there. So I think that strategy has been effective in my professional work, and I would love to bring that path forward to the district.
Mr. O'Connell, same question. What will you do to get an agreement on the teacher's contract?
So, I guess if it was easy, it would be done already, right? That would be my first observation. It's not, I don't think we've got any knight in shining armor riding in on his white horse or her white horse to solve the problem. I was very proud to be selected as part of the community planning group by Manchester Proud as it was doing its work over the last couple of years. And last Thursday night, I think it was, or Wednesday night, they gave a report, an initial part of the report. But one of the key things that they found, and it shouldn't be news to us, was that one of the important deficits in our school district is a lack of trust. And that issue of a lack of trust means that when people go into the negotiating room, and I like Laura, you highlighted talking even negotiation has a certain adversarial nature to it. So there's a lack of trust, and so the people going into the room are going in with that background. It doesn't help that we have people being very adversarial and angry and derogatory about the other side when they're on social media. Sitting in front of the cameras at City Hall on a Monday or Tuesday night, trying to be magnanimous and claiming to be non-partisan. Well, as soon as you leave the room, you scurry off home to your computer and you spend the night tapping the keys, calling people names and calling them out and saying nasty things about them. And then you want us all to pretend that we're going to go in and have a nice, polite conversation and as a community try and resolve the issue. So the first thing we need is we need change at City Hall. We need change at the Board of School Committee. We need there to be, we need to advance the idea of trust. And what the first action that I would be doing is I'd be saying to our public employees in the city, our administrators, remember we've got 5 bargaining units who currently are without a contract. Our teachers haven't had a contract for a year and a half. By the way, they haven't had a contract for 4 years out of the last 7. So this is something that didn't happen overnight. So there has to be recognition of that, there has to be recognition of the pain. For years I've heard people in this city say to me when I complained on these topics and said if it was that bad they'd leave. Well, we lost 100 teachers this summer and they are leaving. And our city and our community can't afford that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say to all our public employees that we've got your back, we're here, we want to resolve this problem, it will be resolved, we've got limited resources, we're going to do this, but we're going to do it through benevolence and common purpose. We'll try and divine the best solution for the community of Manchester. That would be my approach.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connell. Mr. Martin, same question. What will you do to get an agreement on the teacher's contract?
So my hope is that when 2 of the 3 of us are elected in January and we come to that first meeting, the contract's already dealt with, because I think for every day that goes by that we don't have a contract that's harmful for not just our teachers, but every school employee, all 6 different bargaining units, that's really crucial. It also hurts our students. I've knocked on over 2,000 doors this campaign, and I'll tell you that parents are sad when their teachers leave, and they've, especially people who have knocked on doors with teachers who have been in the district for 20 years. I actually saw a teacher of mine from Memorial who's saying, you know, Gene, I'm thinking about leaving because I know if I can go somewhere else, I can get a better salary, and I think that's problematic. But for me, I think we need to work together. Part of it, I really believe it's the personalities. Sometimes I think on both sides, let's be honest, and I think we need to come together and really break down and say we have to have this contract done. And you know, for me, again, it's bringing people together and saying, here's what we can do, here's what we can't do, and really being able to nail this down, because we need a contract for all of our employees, because there are so many challenges that our district faces. There are great things going on, but there's so many challenges, and we need teachers and our educators to be, and the paraprofessionals and all of the folks to be a part of that as we deal with this. And so we have to get that contract done. And I believe after this election is over, we'll be able to do that in a pretty short order. So that's my hope. Thank you.
All right, Mr. O'Connell, please hang on to the microphone. Your questions are going first. So this one is going to be for every candidate is going to get their own question. The first one goes to you, Mr. O'Connell. The state has sent $21.2 million in one-time funding to Manchester. How would you propose spending that money?
All right, well, how much time have we got? So yeah. So the first thing is that obviously it's always a great problem to have. How do we spend money that appears to be sort of money that appears out of the air? And of course it doesn't. In the end, it's taxpayers' money. It's the only source of money that we have. But the money coming from Concord, the biggest disappointment and pity about it is that it is one-time spending, because there's no reason for that other than our governor decided to veto what was a bipartisan agreement across both houses that had agreed on a budget that would have delivered around about $20 million of renewable of money that was going to flow every year. And that would have changed the nature of the conversation that we're having today. And it would have changed it because it would have allowed us to use it for salaries, for instance, to use it to do something about we have a problem with, I think we still have 50 paraprofessional openings in our city. Our substitute teachers are being paid less than you get paid to work at McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts. And that has a real effect in our schools, because when a teacher can't be replaced and is out sick or is missing, the class gets distributed across other classes. So that's the first thing I want to observe about it. I also would like to, without wanting to be too controversial, but I really was upset at the fact that Governor Sununu came into our city and brought a cardboard check and did a tour around the state, going to other cities, and handing out this money as though it was something that he had supported and decided upon. There was zero such money in the budget proposed by our governor. And I don't like to get too political, but I think it was beyond the pale. It was a step too far to come in and represent the people of the state of New Hampshire, and here in Manchester, here I'm your governor and I'm bringing you $20 million for you to spend, when you had opposed it tooth and nail and tried to stop it. So let me address how I would spend it. The needs in our school district are beyond number, perhaps. We clearly have an issue around technology in our classrooms and use of that technology. So there's money needs to be spent there. We have a huge need with regard to curriculum, vertically through our schools, in math and English and in other places. So I would like to see money spent there. I do support the idea of taking some of this money and putting it in a reserve fund, because on the school side of our budget, there is no reserve. I think it's Mr. Rochers might be able to correct us, but it's yeah, $7.
It's something.
It's something very small. It's ridiculous. So I do support that. But I would like to find some way. I'm hopeful that the current House and Senate, in their bipartisan way, that they will repeat for the next biennium the proposals or similar proposals that they had for this one, and that either this governor, if he's still there, or a new one if he's replaced, will see their way to doing the right thing by not just the city of Manchester, but by the whole state, and fund our schools properly. And let's say very quickly, just one thing. You know, the funding level of our schools, it cannot go unsaid here tonight, that Manchester funds its schools on a per pupil basis lower than every other single school district in the state of New Hampshire. And we're in our own little category too, by the way. We slipped down through the spreadsheet and then we fell off the end. Now we've got our own little asterisk box over here. So we spend less per student than everybody else. That has to be addressed. We also have the largest class sizes in the state. So we put more kids into a classroom than anybody else. But it is not just a Manchester problem. It's a statewide problem. When the city of Berlin closes down the last elementary school in the city this year, there is no more elementary school in Berlin. And with all the nonsense about we're a state of one and north of Laconia and what happens in the North Country and all that stuff, we are our state government is allowing that to happen. So it should be no surprise to us that here in Manchester, they're allowing us, with the needs that we have, with the number of students that we have, the largest school district in the state, and we're the least well-funded one. That's an issue that needs to be addressed. Not all of it can be done by this board, of course, but we as citizens need to stand up and fight on that topic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Ms. Kuroka, you're next. Your question is, what is the most important step this Board of School Committee can take to immediately improve all schools?
So I think the most important step we can take first and foremost is actually similar to what I talked about before in terms of contracts. It's all about a shared vision, and I think that Manchester Proud has started that work. So as a community, as schools, as a district, we need to come to agreement about what our strategic plan is. That is our path forward. How are we going to get to the outcomes that we want to see for our students and for our schools? So there's you know, I'm not going to say something like an English curriculum or math curriculum. That's not going to get we're not going to see immediate change with that. That takes time to build up with training and actually implementing that change. But I think a biggest change, and we might not all see it, but I think we could feel it at least if we had a shared common goal and a strategic plan, so we all could get on the same page about where we're heading and what we want to see happen in our schools. That sort of driving force for all the subsequent decisions that we want to make after that about our English curriculum or our math curriculum or how we want to invest dollars. That plan, that vision, and how we're going to know we're actually making progress is really key.
Thank you very much. Mr. Martin, this is your question. How can the Manchester School District and the community work together to prepare today's first graders for the economy of 2032?
Perfect, great question. If I can, I just want to piggyback up some things. I think we have a great opportunity with the $15 million the schools will have, so $3 million in the first year, and the balance of the rest. The next school board should be able to say yes to one question. When we spend these dollars, are we improving student outcomes? I think that's really important. I support what the superintendent wants to bring forward and have a comprehensive reading intervention program for elementary schools. I think that's key. If we don't have students reading by the time they're in third grade, it's very difficult to catch up. So I think that's the first thing. I also think we should look to, I support what Manchester Proud's doing. I'm looking forward to seeing their report. The reality is, though, if we don't have a school board that is willing to take the steps to act, I printed off the first 5 pages of the 2013 curriculum audit. If you really have time to read 293 pages of really fascinating stuff, Google that. And really all you need is the first 3 pages, because if you read those findings and those 10 recommendations, they're still true today. We know the steps that we have to take we need a school board who will take them. I like to think of myself as an obsessive planner and then sort of process guy. I believe in the superintendent. I think we need him. I think of I want him to be the Bill Belichick to the school boards, Tom Brady. We need folks to be able to say, here's what we're going to do to improve our schools, and here's how we're going to go and act. Strategic plan is great. These dollars are great, but we need the courage to make difficult choices and enact the recommendations in that 2013 report. There's very few, if any of them, have been done. So we need to do that. But to go to the actual question, this is really personal for me because my daughter will be a proud Central graduate in 2037, even though I went to Memorial, so that hurts me a little bit, but I think it's important because we live in the Central District, so I'll gladly bleed green for her. But we have to, one, make sure kids are ready to be able to read and have these skills, but also I think we need more trades. I support what the mayor has done in the high schools. I think we need to bring some of those things into the middle schools because not every, I'm one of 3 boys. I went to college. My 2 brothers didn't. They have great jobs. We need more emphasis on the trades. And to me, success is, are you ready to go to college? Yes. Are you ready to go to trade or technical school? Or are you ready to be workforce ready right out of high school? So for me, those are things that as a school board member, I want to look towards from now and in the future. And the reality is you only get one shot to go through K through 12. We have to make it count. And so I hope folks vote for school board members and aldermen who think, and a mayor who thinks about that because those students that are going to graduate in the 2030s, the progress and the success that they're going to have starts now with this election.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. So now we have some audience questions. We've got a couple with names on them, so I'll invite you to come up here and read it if you'd like. First question is from Aaliyah Stagon.
Yay! So I go up.
Bring my mic to you.
Hi, my name is Leah Stagnone. I'm an organizer with ABLE New Hampshire. We're a disability justice organization, and my question is, what will you do to prioritize the inclusion of students with disabilities in Manchester classrooms? And how will you ensure that those students are getting the supports and resources that they need? I know the para shortage has been mentioned, but
We got a lot of questions about that one, by the way. You all get to go on that one. So, Ms. Kuroga, let's start with you.
You really like putting me first.
I do. Well, you're sitting right next to me.
I
So,
know.
yes.
That's kind. So special education. I mean, I think that's one of the places with the funds that we are receiving from the state, the Special Education Trust, we could really look at that. Again, the paras. The para situation is concerning. Not only that we have a shortage, but that we're expecting paraprofessionals with maybe less training or less experience to work with some of our most needy students. So I think that I would like to see us look at how we support our paras, what resources, tools, training, and professional development that we're able to offer them, and our pay. I mean, I think the reality is we need to look at, are we attracting the kind of people that are going to support our students in the way that they need to be supported. I don't think that there's one sort of particular way that we could specifically include special education students, because I think their needs vary so greatly from the autism program at Smith Road to how are we going to better include students in general education, how are we going to help parents understand the IEP process. It really sort of varies. I think though that we have struggled to do more with less, and that sort of, we need to take a turn with that. So I would like to see more investment in paraprofessionals. I would like to see more support for parents. I mean, I've been through an IEP process myself, and my background is in education, including special education, and it is terrifying, difficult to understand, frustrating, even though everyone in the room wants the best for the students. So I think So I think if we can all have the tools and resources that we need, whether it's classrooms, curriculum, adaptive equipment, but the right people working with the student is really important. That's how they're really going to thrive.
Thank you. Yep, and then Mr. O'Connell will go next.
Okay, so I'm going to follow Laura, and she remains seated because anything she's going to do, I'm going to do too. So.
I'll follow that one too.
All right, good. Yeah, you know, again, it's like, how much time do we have, right?
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
2 whole minutes.
That was rhetorical. That was a rhetorical. Give me the nudge, will you? That would be a rhetorical question. I would like to, there are lots of things we could talk about special education, starting with the fact that special education is not funded at the level from the federal government that they originally were going to. So that deficit of, instead of 40%, getting 19% or whatever it is a huge issue. But what I heard in your question, and I'm aware of what Able New Hampshire is agitating towards, if that's not too strong a word, working on, which is about inclusivity. And so the idea of you know, we went, going back 30 years ago, we took people with disabilities and we decided not to warehouse them in buildings with bars on the wall up in Concord anymore, and to mainstream them and to bring them into our school districts, which was clearly a great idea. Of course, it wasn't funded like everything else, and so the effect of that is there. But I'm a big supporter of the idea of including people with disabilities into our mainstream classes and do that fully. And as an example, many years ago, this isn't going to go as long as you think it is, back in Ireland many years ago, when I was a much younger man, the Scout movement made a decision to include people with disabilities. At least one minimum was the requirement in every Scout troop. And I saw it work there, and it stayed with me. And so here in Manchester, I've seen like the Challenger Division at Little League work at Manchester North, which is an amazing program. And I'm very proud to say that last month I accepted a position of Vice President for Recreational Soccer for the state of New Hampshire. And 2 years ago at the board, I led the effort to create a top soccer program in the state of New Hampshire, which is the equivalent of Challenger for kids with disabilities. So it's very close to my heart. We're working on trying to get unified sports, you know, more broad. It's terrible that even in the city of Manchester we've unified basketball in a couple of schools and that's it. But lastly, I think that we should make every effort. There's no reason why kids with special needs should be in some room down the end of a corridor, around a corner, and they go in and out through a special door. There's definitely kids who need, you know, separation, but there are a lot of kids who could be mainstreamed into our classes, and I would support that effort.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connell. Mr. Martin, you too?
I would say that it's unconscionable that we are not making more progress on this. To go back to that curriculum audit in 2013, it said that our students, that we were slipping, that we weren't making any demonstrable progress. Again, when I was knocking on doors in one of the wards, I chatted with the family. I don't want to say too much because I don't want them to be identified in any way, but I went inside and probably talked to them for about an hour and a half, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The challenge to first one, get the IEP, and how difficult it was, and how the mom said to me, you know, I need to be a rocket scientist lawyer to really understand how to do this, and how she felt that she wasn't supported. And then at every turn to have the school district not support the child. Again, I think that's unacceptable. And for me, we have a moral obligation to educate every single child, no matter where they come from, what their parent situation is, no matter what area of schools they live in, and whatever special need they have. So I think we need to do a much better job, and my hope as a school board member, to me it's going to be unacceptable to the administration if that continues to happen if I am elected to the board. And thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. We have another audience question here. Unfortunately, I can't make out your last name, but the first name is Richard. Richard, did you submit a question? That's you? Yep.
Thank you. By the way, my last name is Komi, spelled K-O-M-I. I'm a state rep. I represent wards 4, 5, 6, and 7 here in Manchester, and I'm serving my second term by the State House. My question is to you seated here, and it borders on school funding. What would you do as a member of the school board to ensure that there is equality in school funding, just as there is equality in property taxes?
Thank you, Representative, for your question. Let's start with Mr. Martin this time.
Perfect.
Just mix things up a bit.
Excellent, thank you. And thank you, Representative Comey. For me, I think, one, we need to, and I appreciate Mayor Craig going to Concord, and I thank our state senators and our great representatives for championing this. We have to make sure and not to get too complicated, because I could nerd out for about 3 hours talking about the educational property tax and how that all is funded, but we need more of our fair share. Up until recently, communities like Bedford, Concord, Portsmouth, and Hollis get more dollars because they're growing. And think about that. They're growing, so they're winners in that formula, whereas a district like Manchester loses to some respect because we don't have that piece. So I think we need to champion more at the state level. I think our legislative leaders, the dollars that were one time, we need to make them permanent. We need to advocate for that. I think that would be key. That would help push us where we need to be. But for me, we have a lot of needs in our district. We have an achievement gap that is growing depending on what neighborhood you live in, and we have to do that. Funding is definitely a concern. I also think we have to spend and really look at our programs. We have a lot of programs that the school board enacts. I like data. I think we need to look at, are these having outcomes? Are we doing program evaluations to see, are these being effective? So again, I don't think, I hope that the state suddenly starts to spend 20, 30, million more dollars and sends it our way. But in lieu of that, we really need to look at the resources we have and be more mindful of that and look at the programs that we're creating and how do we do that, partnering with businesses. I think there's a lot of innovative things that we could be doing that we're not doing. My wife's a teacher in Lawrence, Massachusetts. Lawrence, Massachusetts is very supportive of their teachers, empowering their teachers. They have great programs to help close the achievement gap with the funding they have. I think we need to look at some of the communities like that and begin to enact those programs.
Thank you very much. Mr. O'Connor, you're next.
Okay, so like every topic that's been raised tonight, we could probably all write half a book on it.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. I didn't get the yank yet, so please give me the yank. I'll be happy to take it. But Representative Comey, thank you for the question. I'm not going to deal with the state issue right now because everything that Jean said is valid and I agree with. But we're running for the school board here in Manchester, and so there's enough work to do by this board concerning issues of equality and equity and fairness in our school district, and sometimes even within our schools. And the first thing we have to do is overcome the resistance to that thought. I have found in having these conversations in Manchester that people very, very quickly in our school district get very defensive and say, what do you mean? There's nobody not treating everybody equal in my school. And I've built up a relationship with, I think every principal in the city, I'm probably on a first name terms with, but if not every, 90% of them, I know a lot of them, and assistant principals, and 20 years of doing this will get you to that place. And even coming from me, a place of benevolence, where they know, that I'm on their side, they still will resist this. But there's no question that in our school system, there is equality in our school system. And you only have to ask some of the minority populations in our school district, and they'll tell you loud and clear about the fact that they don't feel that they're equally valued, they don't feel they're equally resourced. And that is something that this school board should deal with as a matter of urgency. It's one of the reasons why I support the idea of having students' voices heard at City Hall on our school board, because it turns out this voice was not being heard for the last number of years, and it's not going to be heard with all the best intention in the world. It's not going to be heard because I'll give you an example. My kids have gone to Central High School. I got it for 1 minute. My kids went to Central High School, and we had conversations around our kitchen table with some other students. And the disconnect even with around our kitchen table was amazing. It was amazing to me that I had children who had gone to Central High School who didn't recognize the experience of some of the people sitting at the other side of the kitchen table. And I want to belabor all those right now, but I think you're right on the money. There's inequality and unfairness in our school district right here in Manchester that this school board should work on, and I commit to you that I will work on it.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connor. Ms. Krogan, your question.
O'Connell.
Oh, O'Connell, I'm sorry.
Just in case, I don't want to make a mistake.
I'm surprised that's the last name that you mispronounced, to be quite honest.
I did ask for phonetic pronouncing if you're in an element that.
You need a bigger badge.
So this is actually something that I care a lot about, and I've done a lot of work on. For a few years I worked at Tufts University in the president's office, doing some project administration, and one of his priorities was in fact around diversity and equity. And so I think there were some interesting strategies, and faculty and students and the community of Medford were involved in that work. And so I think there's some lessons learned that I could bring. And I think the first one is that we actually need to be explicit about what we're talking about in terms of equality and equity, because they're not the same. Equality can often be related to like everyone gets the same or everyone loses the same. It's very different from equity. So equity is, there's sort of this visual of 3 kids trying to see the baseball field and there's a fence in the way. Equality means they all get the same size box to see over the fence, but the tall person who could see over in the first place doesn't actually need the box. And so equity is what does each person need to sort of get to see over the fence, and maybe one just needs sort of a step stool, another one needs a couple boxes to make that happen. And so I think we need to make sure that we're using some shared language as we're talking about these issues, so we can make sure that we have that understanding. And I think that would be really helpful in terms of not needing to feel like we need to be defensive, because no one wants to be accused of being a racist or unjust, and so I think we need to be sensitive and understanding of the terms that we're using, and therefore the issues that we're trying to address. I think there's a lot of work we could do with leveling. We've already seen the data about minority students who are in the lower levels staying in the lower levels, and then whether or not it has to do with race or ethnicity, as Jean mentioned, we do have our zip codes determining not just achievement, but really opportunity. And that gap is widening for students. And so we need to, I think, take a look at our policies and programs, really do a scan. There's tools out there we can use, culturally and linguistically appropriate services standards that are put out by the federal government, to just look at what we're doing. Is it the right thing? Have we unknowingly put a barrier up here for students as we're trying to help them succeed, but something else we've done is actually holding us back from making that happen? I don't know that we've done a great policy scan of that yet. I sort of feel the same way, I think, as Jim and Jean in terms of property taxes. There is an undue burden placed on Manchester, and what we're expected to contribute in terms of providing children an adequate education when actually, according to our state constitution, it's the state's responsibility. So while we are doing all this work around racial and ethnic and linguistic equity in our schools, we need to constantly be advocating to our state legislators that the formula we use to fund the work that needs to happen in our schools to close the opportunity gap, that formula is fundamentally flawed and needs to change.
Thank you. We have one last audience question. This one has no signature on it, so I'll read it myself. The question is, how will you ensure that LGBTQ students have the support and resources they need? Let's start with you, Mr. Mark.
I think regardless of, and the question was about LGBTQ, but I would sort of, I would look at the wider spectrum of any population, but I think we need to be an inclusive district, exactly, what we talked about. I think that's really important, but looking at the services, I think we need to ask our students. One thing I'm always amazed about, I guess, but I shouldn't be amazed about, is we actually don't ask our students. I don't think we ask our teachers enough. When I get a chance to chat with an educator, the first thing I say is, if you had a magic wand, what are the 3 things that she would do if you could just do it like that? And I think we could have, I don't think that I have all of the answers. I don't even know if I have some of them, but I want to be able to work with folks. So I would ask folks who are in that population and see what are the services that we need to provide, what are the things that we could be doing better, and then we have to do them. My biggest criticism with the school board is that they just talk, fight, and then repeat. They don't do anything. They've been talking about a cell phone policy for like 4 months. Just do the cell phone policy, right? So I think that's really a problem. So for me, whatever issue it is, I think we need to ask folks' opinion, listen to that, and then make decisions. And so on the school board, that sort of would be my priority.
Mr. O'Connor, same question.
Yeah, thank you for the question, whoever asked it. I think I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was telling them, for a guy who hit his 60s last year, I'm finding myself quite woke, which isn't always seen. Yeah,
We're still saying that. Yeah.
And I was hit 40 years ago. I'm woke now, so and I'm doing a little more woking. But not to be flippant too much, I think that's important, though, that people are that they do look at these issues and consider them in their full complexity and what they actually mean. And it's easy to stand behind slogans, right? Of any of us might. I don't mean us here on the stage, but people can say, "Oh, because it's now, let's look around and take the flavour of the community. Oh yes, I'm supportive of LGBTQ rights, that it's sort of safe to do. It's sort of like part of the following." I think people who want to run for office and want to represent the community, and especially representing a body of 14,500 students who've got all different sorts of backgrounds, you either elect people who are aware of these issues, supportive of people in all their diversity, in every shape and size and colour and orientation, or you have people who are not. And sadly, that's the point at which we're at, right? There are people running for school board, and I think I could happily say on behalf of the people on this stage, I believe that we fall into the category of people who are aware and are conscious, and I leave my friends to put their own words on it. But we have people running for school board who are not are they just not aware, they have antipathy towards such issues, and they deride people who are different, and they will implement solutions in our schools that would harm our students. So that's a very low-hanging fruit, but that's you as voters. Your choice should be to measure these this is an easy thing to see, and say, I'm going to elect people who are going to make the right decisions on behalf of a very diverse, dynamic, and population.
Thank you very much. Ms. Carrillo, the same question.
This is actually something that I care a lot about, and so I have a little bit of, I think, personal history, and then some professional experience that I could share that would demonstrate actually how committed I am to this. Several years ago, after I was divorced, in order to continue being a homeowner and provide for my child and make ends meet, I rented out space in my home to a friend who was transgender, and it was amazing, and I was really excited that my son was part of that, and sort of saw the challenges that she faced, the ups and the downs, how the smallest thing, like a pair of pink slippers from my mother for Christmas, meant so much to her because it wasn't something that her family would ever do. and the struggle that she had with mental health. And sadly, she actually committed suicide. So that's a real problem in the LGBTQ plus community, and it's a real problem with youth. And so I want to make sure that we are thinking about what our students need. And I actually think it connects back to the conversation about equity. What is it in our policies that is supportive or a barrier to our students? And it goes back to our strategic plan, that plan that we have. Are we asking the questions? What is this plan doing for, or how is it working against students of color, students that don't speak English, students who identify as LGBTQ+. These are things that, it's not just about what we have for curriculum or the policy that we have on, ripped jeans. It is about looking at the pieces we have in place as a district and understanding if they are going to work for all of our students. And if they're not, what is it that we need to change so that, so that our students aren't graduating saying, I'm successful in spite of the schools that I went to, but I'm successful because of the schools that I went to.
Thank you, Ms. Florida. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's have a hand for all of our school board candidates, everybody. Closing statement. Let's begin with you, Mr. O'Connell, since you're holding the microphone.
All right, well, I've enjoyed being useful tonight. I've been the microphone stand, and I always like to do something practical. And it was why I sat on the outside for many years, watching school board meetings and sending people texts and phoning them before meetings and after them, and thinking to myself that being out in the schools in terms of parent-teacher organizations or bake sales or sporting events or all the other things that parents do. And I find, as I said earlier, I find myself now at the point that I really feel that our school system actually needs people who are not career politicians, who are not running because they want to be there for a number of terms, and it's been for whatever reason. So I would just like to say to you that I think most people in Manchester who've been paying attention to schools, and not to be presumptuous, but I think people who've been paying attention to schools, if you've been watching school board meetings or automatic meetings in recent years, if you've been watching the press, you know that the name Jim O'Connell is one that has come up again and again and again, fighting for parents, fighting for students, fighting for teachers. And I'm very proud of that record, and I'm standing on that record here tonight. I'd like to say that it's been a great pleasure to be here on this stage with Jean Martin and Laura Karoga, because they're two very fine people, and I'm very happy to be here with them. And it's great. We talked about the issue of incivility and etc. on our school board, and I think if our school board could be as well behaved and thoughtful as well behaved is a very sort of junior term, isn't it? But we obviously have three thoughtful people on here tonight, and so that's a wonderful start. You have great candidates to vote for. I thank you for coming. I thank the organisations for putting this on, Manchester Community Television, of course, for being here, and also our friends at Manchester Evening and etc. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Karoga.
So I thought I'd just take a quick opportunity to just tell you a little bit more about myself, some of the things I've sort of mentioned as we've shared our responses tonight. But my background is in education, and I know some that may not necessarily be what some people find is important in a school board member. But I think the context of understanding how our educational systems work. My bachelor's is in early childhood education administration. I have a master's of education and child development with a concentration in administration. And so my work has actually, my professional life has focused more on the sort of prenatal actually and birth through 8. And then also worked in higher education, supporting teachers. But a lot of my work has also been in community outreach. meaning reaching out to schools or early childhood programs to identify, what needs are and how can we find the funds to address those needs. And that's the work that I do now, outreaching to other organizations to identify what some of the community needs are here in Manchester for children and their families. One of the things that I'm really proud of that has happened in the last 3 years is working with the police department, the YWCA, and several community organizations like the Mental Health Center, Create, Outreach, Waypoint, to develop the Adverse Childhood Experiences Response Team, or ACER, which goes out whenever a child has been exposed to some sort of trauma or violence. And what we want to do is connect with that child and that family early on so that we're mitigating any of the risk for poor health and behavioral outcomes later on that are associated with adverse childhood experiences like substance abuse, depression, parental incarceration, child abuse, neglect, all of those things. And the baseline for this was 0 in 2016. We knew we had a lot of children being exposed to these kinds of things, but they weren't getting any sort of systematic referral connection to supports that could help them. And to date, we've connected with over 1,400 children in our community, and I think that my ability to connect and outreach to partners in our community, to families in our community, is something that will go a long way in the future to, again, carry out that plan, get input about how we should be moving forward and what is going to truly make a difference for our students and our schools.
Thank you again. And I just want to thank my two friends. I think that we're all running for the office, but I think that if the 15 members of the school board were composed of the 3 of us, replicated, we would be in such a better place and be able to really move our district forward for our students. Again, Gene Martin, running for school board at large, not interested. I never thought that I would ever run for school board, not interested in running for any other office. I just want to make sure that our students have the best chance to succeed. And that's personal to me. There's no way that I would have been a 9-year-old boy in a homeless shelter going on to be the first person I went in my family to college without a public education, without Manchester really being there for me and having the best teachers. I think of people like Scott McGilvery, who's no longer with us, but great people who really saw something in me and said, Gene, you can do that. And I want to make sure that my daughter, all of our kids, grandchildren, even if you don't have a student in the district, that student who we're educating today could be your nurse, could be your mechanic. You don't know what impact the education that our students are having today will have on your life. But our school board and our school district really is at a crossroads. We really need big fundamental change. And we know the things. I talked about the curriculum on it, what Manchester Proud is going to put forward. We need school board members who are going to plan and say, here are the 10 things we need to do, and how are we going to do 5 of those this year, 3 of them the next year, and then finish them off. We don't have much time. There are great things going on in our schools, but when we talk about equity, when we talk about all of these things, if elected, I'd be the youngest person and the first person of color ever elected citywide in Manchester. That would be a huge thing for the city, not for me, but because I understand what it's like for those kids who are sitting there in the classroom, what that means and how we have that. We really need folks who understand that we have to help these students, because again, I go back to my own experience. If it wasn't for those teachers, if it wasn't for public education, I certainly wouldn't be on this stage. I wouldn't be a homeowner. I wouldn't be working where I am. We, as a school board, as the 15 folks who will be elected this November, need people who are willing to roll up their sleeves and work with Mayor Craig to get things done. And if I'm lucky enough to have your vote, that's what you're gonna get in me, someone who's gonna roll up my sleeves, work hard, and fight every day so kids like me have the same chance that I had. And at the end of the day, that's what we have to be judged by. So thank you so much for coming, and I hope to earn your support. Thank you so much.
Okay, we're gonna move on to our Alderman at Large portion of the evening. We obviously only have just one candidate.
Go that way. No, we're good, we're good. We did it. I'll make you all move. If I'm not answering, stop now. I was gonna put a live request.
So we'll get started with our second portion of the evening with our Alderman candidate. And of course, we have Ms. Kate Turner-DeRocher here. Thank you for joining us, Kate.
Thank you.
All right, so we have some questions prepared for you tonight, so let's just get started with the first one. Well, actually, no, it's an opening statement first. How about that?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You were going to slide in.
No.
Okay.
No.
So, my name is Katie DeRocher. I am a resident of Ward 11. I have been a Manchester resident my whole life. And
I think flip it off. There you go.
There we go.
I'll start over. My name is Katie DeRocher. I live in Ward 11. I have been a resident of Manchester just about my whole life. I lived in Goffstown for a few years and in Ware for a few years when my children were small. After my divorce, I ended up moving back to Manchester and raised my family here. Both my daughters have graduated from Manchester Public Schools, and I have served on the school board in Ward 11 for the past 6 years. My reason for switching over to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen is it's twofold. One, I feel like 6 years is a long time to spend on one board, and it was time for me to move on. I don't think that my ideas were as fresh as somebody new coming in would be. And that said, I feel like I still have a lot to give to the city, and I care about Manchester a lot, and know that my representation is thoughtful, and I'm reasonable. I'm open to communication. I'm a listener, and I feel like I would serve the city well in one of the at-large seats.
Thank you very much. It's been our first prepared question. Could you list the specific ways you will engage with all your constituents, including one initiative to improve the quality of life for city residents?
I answered this just the other day.
What a coincidence.
Yeah. So, okay, now, wait, can you ask the question again?
Oh, of
Sorry.
course. Could you list?
I was so fresh.
We'll break it up. Could you list specific ways you will engage with all your constituents, including one initiative to improve the quality of life for all city residents?
Okay. So, engaging with constituents is very easy for me. I'm a very approachable person. I return phone calls, and if you know me, or even if you don't know me, I will talk to anyone. If I'm at the store, I talk to people. I'm approachable, and I care what people think. An initiative in terms of engagement, I'm extremely accessible. So if I am on Facebook and I'm commenting on something, I will leave my phone number and encourage someone to call me so that it's just not a blind, keyboard conversation. I'm always open to, taking that call and talking to whomever and listening to whatever the problem is, regardless of my beliefs. So if somebody, has a criticism of my vote or anything that I've done, I'm always willing to listen and, take away from that conversation that person's feelings and their thoughts.
Our next question. Could you identify the biggest economic opportunities and challenges for the city and provide at least one initiative you would propose in order to improve economic development?
Okay. Manchester has so many amazing opportunities happening right now. one of the biggest things that I have seen since living in the city has been the development of the mill yard. You know, I grew up here in starting in the 70s, and the mills were not used at all, except I think Pandora might have still been open at that time, but they were just unused buildings and falling apart. I think people or businesses moving in and renovating them and creating housing in there has been huge for the city. You know, there are hotels coming in, which is going to mean that, you know, we'll have more job opportunities for people. One of the things that an initiative I would like to see put forward is more action on affordable housing. I think right now the city has a burden of extremely high rent prices, and it's unaffordable for families to live in Manchester or to come to Manchester to work in a job where they're not making a ton of money, but the rents are so high that they're not able to easily rent a good apartment. So I would like to see some sort of development or you know, an initiative that would work towards addressing that. This is like peppering questions.
I know, I feel like I'm just...
No break. Maybe
Mr.
Herbert would like to come up and answer some questions.
Our next question, what is the single most important step?
You're doing fine.
That we as a city could take to move the needle on homelessness?
That's a tough one. You know, homelessness has always been a problem in Manchester. You know, obviously it has significantly increased in the past, I want to even say the past year, 6 months, with the closure of the Concord shelter and also a shelter in Nashua closing. You know, it's put a burden on the city just because we have the seemingly only available resources to address homelessness. And I think the one way, or not the one way, but one of the ways that we could address that is by, you know, putting more pressure on the state and speaking with our state legislators to, you know, work to get us the resources that we need to help the homelessness in our community. You know, no one is homeless by choice, and what's missing for each individual certainly varies. And so I think we need more resources to be able to identify what people need and how we can help them. And I honestly don't know that it's a city issue or something that the city can provide a solution to singularly.
We have some audience questions here, and the first one is signed. We have Joe Gallagher submitted a question. Joe?
Good evening. My name is Joe. I live in Ward 9. Been there 41 plus years. The question is, it's a long-term one out when we have the next charter commission. Would you be in favor of eliminating the mayor's position? And there's no, we've had a lot of good mayors. It's not that I'm looking to dump the mayor, but to hire a city manager and let the board elect their own chairperson and run the city as such. I know it's an off-the-wall question, but it's something in the wheels going forward. And I have no animosity towards most of our mayors. You know, Joyce is a great mayor. But it's something that we should look at, address, hiring a professional to run the city, and then all the people that hire that person have a say, which is the board and aldermen and the voters. And it works a little differently. And you're not worrying about politics, you're worrying about running the city the best way. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Simple question.
Simple question. Yeah, don't take that one.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting question. I've never thought of it in any way. So the question is, would I support the question being put to on the Charter Commission or having it investigated? I don't see why not. I think that if the voice of the people is spoken and that's something that they want to see happen, then I would support that. I don't know that I would ever say no to a question being put to the city in the charter commission. I think that that's how the real voice of the people is heard. Certainly we represent, but we don't represent the entirety, whereas the people would be able to decide that. No, you didn't ask for my opinion, so.
You did, that's true. Do you want to give it?
No.
You said you'd support it.
I would, thank you.
Thank you.
We do have one here that's going to require your opinion. Another audience question. That says, what is your stance on the proposed Granite Bridge natural gas pipeline?
So I'm opposed to that, just flat out opposed. I think that I don't think that we need to be providing access to other countries for fossil fuels. I think that there's enough, how do I say it? There are enough innovative ideas that we can, really, and we should start moving away from, the fossil fuels and using renewable sources of energy. So I would, I don't know that would ever come before the city as a decision, but I definitely don't support.
It would start in Manchester. So.
It would start, but
Yeah.
but my question would be, would there be a vote for the city?
There should be.
Thank you, at least.
Well, I would oppose it.
Other questions? This is for all the candidates. That's obviously just you.
All of us.
They all did answer it online. Look at to see, but for now, it's just you. As you are aware, housing is in short supply in Manchester. What are your thoughts on amending zoning ordinances to allow for more affordable housing for single and low-income adults who may currently be homeless or home insecure?
Yeah, I definitely support that. Getting, the most vulnerable security and stability is so important to me. My whole life I've always stuck up for the underdog or the people without a voice, and this is a great idea. If we could implement that, I think it would solve a lot of problems that we currently face, and so yeah.
And our last audience question and last question of the night is from a Kai Johnson. Kai, you out there?
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Kai Johnson. I'm from Ward 7. Portsmouth recently passed the first municipal ban on styrofoam in New Hampshire. Would you support passing a municipal ban on styrofoam in Manchester? Why or why not?
Thank you. I would definitely support that. I can tell you that when I get takeaway food, I just cringe when it comes in styrofoam. It just, you're not able to recycle it. It just has no, there's no need for it. I think we could use other products that may cost more but aren't harmful to the environment.
Thank you very much. And if you want to offer your closing statement.
It's been like the Katie DeRocher show.
It has been.
So I don't know if I thanked the organizers for this, but Alessandra, thank you so much for affording this opportunity to all of the candidates, and also the Inklink and
New Hampshire Youth
Movement for putting this together. I was really excited to be able to do it because it gives me, more access to talking to voters than, knocking on doors. I'm running citywide and I'm just me knocking on doors. So it's it's a bit daunting. So this opportunity has been great. And I just want to just reiterate that, you know, I am a really reasonable person, and I know that doesn't sound like totally invigorating for why you would want to vote for me, but I think that that goes a long way when you're making decisions for, you know, that affect the city. And I've maintained that on the school board for a long time, which, as you've heard from the prior guests, you know, there's an awful lot of personality on there, and a lot of it is just camera time. But I think from what you would get from me is, you know, just somebody who's thoughtful, who, you know, cares about the infrastructure of the city, who cares about whether, you know, we put fire trucks in service and include personnel with it. You know, like, things have to be done thoughtfully, and we have to listen to the people that we hire to do the jobs so that, you know, we're doing things right for the city. There's too much where we try to cut corners, and I think that, you know, we really need to take the time to thoughtfully serve, you know, serve the city through our departments and just make better decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Osha. Thank you to all of our candidates for coming. Thank you to Rights and Democracy, to Manchester Ink Link, and to the Youth Movement for helping to support this, and the library for hosting us, obviously. I'm sure they would all love if you signed their placards and cards before you walk out. Thank you all again for coming. The most valuable part of democracy is a well-informed electorate, and that's you guys. Isaac?
Okay, just real quick before y'all get up and go, I'm going to pass it over to Alessandra to say a few closing words, and then I got just one announcement to make.
So as Travis said, thank you to all of our candidates and the audience members for participating. This is the kind of stuff that we need to be doing in Manchester. We need to be like acting with our municipal government and not just passing back off to other people to run things in the city. So thank you so much for everyone for being here. I also wanted to invite you all to November 12th here at the library. We're going to be having a forum on housing. Progressive Manchester, our coalition, is putting that on. We'll have members of the community who work with Manchester Housing and people sharing their stories of how they've the struggle they've had finding housing in the city and working on finding those solutions together as a community. So November 12th here at the library again at 6 o'clock. And I also wanted to let Isaac say a few words.
Thanks. Thanks again, everybody. Just like give yourselves a round of applause for being here. Thank you again to the candidates. Thank you again to Travis, to Manchester Ink Link, and to New Hampshire Youth Movement, doing a lot of super important work. How many folks in this room are Rights and Democracy members right now? Got a couple. Okay, cool, awesome. Thank you everyone who is supporting our work ongoing. If you're not, I would love for all of you to sign up as Rights and Democracy members. What we're wanting to build long term is a progressive movement that lasts well into the future. We can't just be organizing for some win that we need right now or next year. We have to be thinking long term, and we have to build like durable, long-lasting progressive movement that can see the wins that we need, and it's going to take time. It's going to take all of us throwing down, organizing together, and to help actually fund this movement. So I would implore y'all to sign up as members. There's donation envelopes on the table outside. If you can pitch in $5 a month, $10 a month, it makes a huge difference in us being able to continue this work, to be able to keep the lights on and be able to have staff that are working on this, waking up, thinking about how we can keep organizing and keep building progressive power and making sure that we're seeing the wins that we need for our public schools, for our health care, for workers' rights, for housing, right, to address the climate change. Like, we have to be having folks who can actually spend the time, like day in, day out, to think about this and help coordinate this work. The one other thing I wanted to say is our membership assembly is coming up on November 16th. It's going to be over in Brattleboro at SIT. There'll be a day-long event where we're going to have workshops and trainings. We're going to have some big-name speakers. I'm not really supposed to be public about it yet, but we're really hoping Ayanna Presley's going to join us, and hopefully we'll be able to be super public about that soon. And it's just a great opportunity to connect with people across Vermont and New Hampshire that are organizing in the progressive movement, to learn lessons and to build relationships. So I hope you can make it out on November 16th. There's also quarter sheets about it out there. Thank you all so much for coming. Look forward to connecting again.